Chapter 8 Astrodia. I woke in the dead of night to the sounds of hogs bellowing some. Distracted by their initial distressed sounds, I made zero noise. I looked over towards Mo, who I could distinguish was turned around staring at me. Indifferent, they opened their driver's side door before snorting to clear his airways to discuss. We're here. It's a bit different from the hotel you two are used to. I assure you it will make a warm home for some time. Follow me inside. I got out, and even in the darkness, noticed that the sand here was blackened. A layer of dirt mixed into the sand, keeping the color dark. I stepped into him with Sullivan, a man who introduced himself to me from the shadows, walked through the front entrance of the smaller living space. A large shed put together with fiberglass scrap, wood, nails, metal plating and all. 7 rooms aligned next to each other, with fabrics sewn around, straw for bedding. No pillows. I found her, she approached me, I gave her a hug. For the first time in a while. I was unsure of what was happening and where we were going. Scared, I thought with my head cocked forwards how to get what we wanted. I needed to keep focused, belligerent, sharp, and confident. Surprised at her face, eyes blazing with energy, looking like she might take charge for now. Sullivan pointed us to a place, one of the 7 rooms to sleep. So we did. Laying there, I couldn't cry, but for now she needed me not to also. Overnight, at some point, she left to another room to lay by herself. I woke up without her next to me, and feeling distance, removed myself from fear at the start of the day. I checked outside the room to find rows of hog farms stacked around me. The smell vicious. I wore a face which recoiled all sense. The previous night I failed to catch the revel stench when the farm animal was created. Somewhere at the dead of night we escaped the paved roads to neighborhoods connected together by packed dirt tire track roads surrounded by the screams of pigs. The ground was dark gray with the dirt in the daylight. The scorching desert sun greeted me from the face level in the morning. Indifferent to the work around me as the people hustled and bustled to keep their hogs fed. Continued in a group of housing they ran and fought. Together pushed along in masses and transported now and again to slaughter or feeding stations. I noticed large smokestacks above the tight-packed buildings with hogs. Both boars and sows wailing in displeasure and impolite conditions. I escaped to a pig-containing house on the lot, with open wall containing house on the lot with said open wall hovering spaces to see their eyes. I wanted to understand the animals causing the shrill noises, drowning all commotion besides shouting voices from neighboring farm workers. I turned to see a truck pull up beside the farm next door, and the driver passenger rushed into the back, opening up the 2 pull doors to hogs exploding out the back. Piling over another to escape, they were dropped into a closed shed, with more workers shooting them in the spine with a bolt from a gun so they could only use their front legs. Screaming and writhing for a moment with broken anxious looks, they eventually dragged themselves to the invisible place, hidden from sight only excluding a single mirror which hid them in the back. The shed enclosure procrastinated to themselves from my devastated vision, invisible. Polite, I treated each pig with dignity as I looked into their tired faces, crammed together in a large pen, waiting to be removed to feedlots. All they had to look forward to is being fed, or giving nothing but their life to live by eating, at least in my mind. I failed my stoutness, and I divided myself into them with compassion. A different system on the farm. I was staying to keep them from running off in transport. Each pig had a front and back foot removed to keep them from finding triumph in escaping their penitentiary. Walking on their stumps they could only hobble. Piglet foot bones were good for the heart. A single worker told me the meat was pureed into bread while walking by. They noticed my face of unrest. They ground it up and laced the meat puree into bread, a ritualistic delicacy the family I was with knew well. They explained me later I was delicate, while at least they watched the pig combustion. Information swallowed me as the ground bones were consumed as part of the bread. The only part of the pig they ever ate was the meat. They all lied over again over supper. We consumed gratefully at this point. Every other piece of the pig was transported as a part of the animal, along with the living species to a place for slaughtering. Pickup trucks gathered often to transport each hog for slaughter. Every part of the pig was used for various purposes. Observing every structure on the lot, I could find decorations of big pone charms, hanging art. When I asked the workers what the decorations of the stalls of the bones and other pigs, they explained the bones represented peace and death, and they helped calm not only the workers, but each individual doomed life as well. I found the bone absorbing all toxic spirit into their pores of calcium stone with an effect of reversing sorrow. Looking into the eyes of the center, I found the black dots, and while reading their personality, mood, and heart, I only noticed despair and hopelessness. Every breath would make some noise, a hustle of their thorax throats, growing and fiercely broken notes of sorrow. blissful in their self-expression, walling and pinned up against each other. The majority of these hogs had their teeth removed, pulled out immediately after the first bite laying into a fellow pig. I blessed them with any human presence, given that I need to interact with them the way I found meaningful. They stared into me almost as they were two domesticated farm animals. Given as I gazed into their pupils, I presented them with something new, interaction with the person in a way different than the treatment each of them expected. The soul in comparison to the cruelty of the hand, the utter indifference most felt to inhuman life due to our ability to use equipment based on our body's anatomy and specialized form. The hand specifically engineered with palms and digits. The only answer I could scrounge from their soul's perspective as I stared into their eye was trapped sorrow. Their inside bodies in a state of encompassing heat and milking pain. They are motionless beside their stereotyping behaviors. With close inspection, I caught the light striking the sides intake into the black center, indicating the alteration of flesh between the pupils and iris. A small lightless spot within the near black brown of their colorful dilating tissue. I found common grounds between our souls, pondering the head trauma I endured to this difference it made in the inner world of my eyes conjured and what it meant for this animal. I forgave him for his domestication, and he forgave me for my difference. Would wild animals treat me the same? My girlfriend did. I meandered back towards the housing after a final glance to the stables of pigs. None of them needed anything off me uneasy about our new location. I needed to communicate with anyone awake on our escape from a coastal desert to the inner working zone in the encircled city. Working its dream as I dropped my skull with my eyes at my feet, I led a life better as a person in pursuit of something beyond nomadicism. Entering the sliding doors wooden house of the spliced together working farmhouse, the building which contained the kitchen, I removed my boots and wandered towards what smelled like good. Rounding the door frame, only Mo, sitting at the table talking to a stranger, she greeted me. Her name was Rhodas, and by watching her move with metal sheet in hand with cooked pig on top, her torso and hovering arms placing the tray upon the cement countertop, I understood this woman was above and at ease. Most started and presumed everyone else was still asleep with my agreement. I paced in a circle around the room, hovering the walls, and took a seat in the corner of Mo and slouched over to continue talking. Intact after our days of journeying, I placed my arms out to read them and focus attention. I looked at Mo's face and found ease. His eyebrows folded I took so I might better read his eyes. As his diamond face took me down to mouth level, with lips moving speaking about the actions for our day, Mo wanted us to help us find work, needed to assure his ambitions. Enforcing it was someone who leaned in to having things worked out for anyone, who paid him for the timekeeping, then moving them, hopefully afloat now. In agreement, we decided the best option would be pursuing contract work. Since this work was scarce, another option might be delivery, with factory work as a final fallback, solution sufficing if failure was a result for the first two options. Taking 20 minutes, we pulled our minds together before the serving of breakfast once the others arose. I reached out to grab sausage links before Avery instructed me to eat up. I excluded any strange glance to her and instead focused on my arm extending and retracting with what I so desired. I set with them down on my plate before defending myself. I looked at her as an entire defenseless person. Without hesitation, she backed off some with a questioning stare. Trillis was now seated but began with a strange misdemeanor. I have the rest of my life to spend with the same level of disregard. I put in all behavior, but today I would like to get started quick before we return to our fabulous port. He paused some here, trying to find the answers to what might make the statement appear genuine before finishing. After all, I have every day to keep myself busy with various projects. I would like to get back to home to finish a new one before next week. I looked up perplexed and guilty since it was my place to fix Trillis with information on our next move.
I'm not sure.
We had one day to venture between varying places of appointment to seek meaning in work, and so we ignored each other, knowing the plan as a collective was to continue pulling our instructional consciousness into a group of influence over others to create decisions. Mo wanted me to establish a cleaner excuse, a better reason for me to stop him from eating any less before, and I could interject Rhoda before she broke her private encasing around her pro-social mind and bellowed on how the food is endless. No more today need us worry for hunger, since the population of hogs and their meat was seemingly never extinguishing. I fitted myself with some silent glances inward for ambition, since no one in the room seemed entirely motivated to work around my unease. This is my life, and I needed to grasp at something, and I decided to self-inhabit it with the best to engage. While the others talked, I silently planned an internal monologue, and every value I mistered, and set goals on how I might escape this world and keep a job at the same time. Helplessly, I reminded myself of the dangers and inconsistencies of the remainder of life drenched in my conscience with. Never since I first entered my mind had I felt this worried. The atmosphere hostile since I heard the wailing of the pigs, which seemed to encircle every glancing point of the district. My troubles were coincided with the noise around me, jabbing me with little worried thoughts. Entangled with the nonchalant and bent attitude of the breakfast table, I felt ease and solitude turning inwards even in an anxious mind. I stopped acting towards myself and on my own anxious experience, and instead waded back into the conversation around the table. Trillis was talking about himself, but since everyone was nearby and done eating, I decided to send out a signal, moving the conversation towards meaning, planning roles for the existing team members. I hoped Mo might co-pilot my interactions, carrying weight with any potential business mark during our employer. I escaped with Mo intact while Trillis entertained the woman with banter. This ceased after Avery took her last sausage. She stood up and filled her mouth, ready to move. We turned our rooms entirely motivated, packing up their bags before escaping towards a pickup truck, whose driver's name I should never learned. The old man Hoover petitioned to sit up front, while the two girls took the middle seats around us. The three boys took the bed. The truck was large and rode its frame close to the ground on small wheels, so hoisting myself into bed held no panic. I shot Trillis a glance and barely to see the front teeth and bite similar to a mule. I stared a bit to the side, sitting my torso down in the harangue, holding my beauty queen pose. The truck started out and dehydrated now. I asked for water. Unfortunately, a small inconvenience from a flustered morning, a meandering amongst condensely pinned-in animals stopped my any thoughts from carrying myself in any greater extent than following others from occurring. Now moving, I no longer found myself surrounded by the stench or explosive sorrow of the sows or otherwise, and instead noticed the only distraction is the muggy desert air from all the concentration of hog shit and compiling industrial and yard waste of nearby farms. In comparison to the mechanized, organized system, these hog farms are set up poorly, using fencing materials such as scrap wood and sheet metal to construct barn housing and metal piping for the enclosures, and the overall look was together, but like a civilization without government intervention, lacked the funding, holding itself together with materials below average construction grade structures. I knew for government property. My mind caught traction of the sows in comparison to the man who killed on the bike. My mental state was pristine, and I quickly realized the sows held more leeway on my mood due to their expressions repeatedly penetrating my brain, conjuring a reaction both physically suppressing myself and causing me emotional turmoil. We were killing the person with a split-second reaction where we did not necessarily see any distinguishing features to help us indicate any sort of human qualities we could relate to. I felt stuck listening to the wailing of the boars and sows who set a mood. In time, after rounding few corners, the route was generally linear, leading straight into the city center. We found ourselves at a coil of industry. After rolling over a single large tubular hill, we found ourselves looking over a short decline of complexes comprising the city block. With outskirts behind us, I can now see the sparing cars and travelers by foot maneuvering the tight city from plain sight, and the establishment sprawled down the short incline into the flatbed oasis city. We drove over 3 waterways and uptook them upon bridges. The center of town had a single district built upon wooden slatted docks with wooden hut buildings lining each side. This opened up at its end to a larger flat saltbed lake. Extremely shallow, it wouldn't surprise me if it occasionally saw nearly entirely dried up in summer months. Surrounded by the concrete buildings on its west bank with hollow paneless windows, these buildings extended upwards to 7 floors and traced the city. Built as high-rises upon each other, they sang as the wind blew upon them, with openings letting sunlight through into small shacks set up as offices and businesses, with dyed tapestry drapes concealing parts from view, interiorly hidden by their outside walls. Their cold, calm exteriors helped to find peace for the moment. Perking around the lake was factory buildings and cement warehouses with sheet plating roofing. These factories, also made from cement, they plumed smoke, assumably from coal dug from mines spotted out in the distance where freight liners extended to. Large marbled stone-walled buildings expanded out, the first signs of desert changes from dunes back into mountainous terrain. Electricity posts were unnecessary in the city, and lights were hung between windows of the cement buildings. On the street, hanging curtains were strung out the windows to create markets, bundled over by the drapings created shade for the market dwellers. These were off the sides of the center line, two-way road as we drove on. I watched multiple transport trucks move through town, small bedded pickups like the ones I was seated in, although they were carrying used goods, furniture, and foods. We stopped at the edge of the docks to unload ourselves in Cameron, and when I named, our driver wished us good luck. Chickens passed us by, with several baby chicks wilting close by. These people were used to close conditions and the brutality of the desert sun. Unlike the coastal city, they relied on no breeze from the ocean. Set alone, they lived amongst the algae of the close-knit lake out on the docks. I stepped cautiously out onto the first board, and for the moment I looked across the water to watch the smoke rise from the mountains in the distance. I pondered what work would be like having a job for a shipping company transporting. I was caught up by the guard by Avery's yelp. Why do I feel stuck here? This was bad news for me. Noticing her troubled, I approached her and asked, what's wrong? Eventually we found ourselves in argument. Luckily, Trillis and Mo elected to guide us during our dispute. She explained to me she felt overwhelmed. I agreed but wanted her to stay calm as we had one day of being helped before being alone on our own again. She wanted to take things slow, but I wasn't sure if that was an option. Before finding any resolution, we were guided to a center point after taking a right onto another section of dock, where a carpet was laid down with the business papers and clients lined to speak with them. We were behind two who at one point poked at Avery, encouraging her to own the cock and tame the cock. Being a polite young lady, she obliged cautiously, looking to the ground before rebounding to the agreement at hand. Eventually, we both became tired of our bickering once we were beckoned over by the four men and the older woman centered around the carpet. They first explained that the city things were run differently. They worked for the governing society and were humbly set up here to advise people in need of what they could find work services based on their skills of previous work, experience, or qualifications. Set on my abilities of transportation and contract work, I met them at their level, sitting down to explain my abilities. Avery and I wishfully granted the entire background of ourselves and our travels, the work we've done and the skills we've specialized in. They agreed to help us find more work, since this is what we had set our minds up to do. After explaining our priorities, I wanted a traveling job which could support us in our lifestyle of moving. We wanted independence amongst the other workers and desired a large, diverse, non-personal company where we could feel together and undisputed while we worked with others. They referenced the various places around town which Mo requested listings for. They happily obliged and wrote each contractor down who specialized in transportation. They wrote who had to identify and pushed us to come back if we ran out of luck and needed help finding secondary work instead. Trillis ended the meeting by rolling his shoulders and beckoning us downwards in angst after being left the one man standing. We stood up and shook the center man's hand after bending down and was given my thanks and best wishes. Mo took the listing and scrabbled us for us reading first glance, acknowledging the postponed help we provide before turning to Lacey and Odie, renamed ready to leave. After standing up, I followed my line of sight along the docks to the shore. The same path I followed to get the people on the rug was the one we took to get back. We paced along from the center up the dock to the cross in the road, then took the left to the mud embankment, which dropped off into the water. For the time being, I wanted to follow Mo and the path laid out by the working advisors. Our first stop was inside a building, hidden in an office space created by veiling tapestries. We found the building by walking several blocks, turning at points and leading to a concrete 3-story building with partially open walls. We climbed stairs to the second floor, observing the wooden structure set up to hold privacy for the various workers. We found the first contracting company hidden by a pentagon of tapestries hung on the wooden boards as first contracting company decorations large enough to cover both sides. The people are intelligent and polite, 4 of them working around the center desk with enough space for each of them. They approached us, giving us encouragement to find places to stand. They were supervisors for a large contracting company which works to transport goods across the mountains. Our first choice, they were impersonal and professional, giving us their contact information, potentially offering us 1 year of work in exchange for a lifestyle of having to sleep in communal houses with other workers. The pay was below average and required a dining accommodation setup with a company where each worker held meal tickets with the company where they could go to a kitchen near the housing and set up to eat. These 2 issues held no vice with my life, but I was unsure with Avery. The contract sounded consolidating and constricting, but any business held their sway. The work itself was transporting crates of jerkied pork and other food items manufactured in the cities to various spots on the outer side of the mountains. 7 spots in total, 3 of which I knew, one small town, maybe 70 residents, at which a single mart sold the goods we would be providing. The town was set up surrounded by naturally occurring mounds, which dotted a rare change in the natural woodland landscape on the western side of the mountains. This portion was a prairie where wildflowers bloomed in the spring where I visited years ago. The other 2 towns were situated higher in the mountain pass, practically set up if it has been dug into the hillside mountain, cutting out a large chunk of the earth as a jagged shape. Their showed charms out here in wooden stores carved with the shallow points, resembling deities situated in animals, nature, and people. The third stop I knew was off the paved roads and had a 2-way pebble road bringing goods in, and one was built next to a large river. Nearing the size of the port city, had a single power supplying water mill along the river. Ancient, it was kept running through the years and helped supply electricity to the town. I visited these places once long ago with my parents on a sort of vacation to the mountains. The other 4 locations we might potentially help supply remained unknown to my experiences. They asked us for our full names before the interview, and I answered with Joyce Backwell, and Avery answered with Avery Stillmet. They were pleased and continued helping us learn about their business as I conducted the interview, like I was being fed answers as I talked, answering their questions about myself. Do either of you have any prior working experience? We did and answered already, explaining our contracting job before the initiation of our interview. We had worked hard labor on the farm, helping to keep the place running, growing, and bringing in stock. We explained ourselves and the talent we were both focused on while working as farmhands. Based on the information we've given you so far, what makes you attracted to this company? This was a tricky question for me and required me to repeat back to the interviewer all the nice things they had mentioned about the company without much thought. It more closely resembled a test of my recent memory than my ability to think of nice things. The conversation trailed off here for some moments as the interviewers collected themselves in the next questions. They decided to involve themselves in the finer detail of investigating and asked questions stemming from previous discussions, starting with the grimace. Out of all of our benefits, which ones would you describe the most helpful to you? I answered honestly, enforcing that I would feel really comfortable with the benefit of having the free food. Avery answered surprise, faking excitement in a charming, believable, and feminine way that the housing would provide extra safety in her life, since as of now we had nowhere to live. The business partners were astounded by this and decided to end the interview with several similar questions, requiring us to repeat back information that had given to us and why it pleased us. In retrospect, as we left, I wondered why they wanted us to carry the interview. I thought since the company was large, it may have been a waste of their time to hear us carry on a conversation. Regardless, we left feeling bewildered as the interview was vague and choppy. They pushed for a dialogue that was conversational and instead got long-winded phrases. Now off to the next phase of the day, we would travel another 5 blocks to the lower-class district where the businesses were hiding amongst street urchins. I placed alongside Mo, discussing with him how he thought the next interview process might be improved, and he assured me that with the practice I would feel just fine. With each interview passing, I would improve my skills for the next. So we arrived at the new office, which was a small wooden single-story building with an open front entrance with a door prop holding the door open. We opened up as soon as we entered the building, and the atmosphere was cool, even with all the muggy desert air. One woman approached us and greeted us with a handshake, introducing herself as Stella. A polite, strong-framed, slender woman, her introduction set the mood well for the remainder of the interaction. She initiated by explaining her role of the company. In entirety, her role stemmed as holding the front door down as a secretary for the mid-range contracting company. Incense burning and leaving the air smoky, compiling with their tobacco smoke, were escorted to behind the counter room, where we all took seats around a small table. Without any hesitation, the conversation began with an interview, starting with our names and explanation that only myself and Avery were searching for employment. She asked about our individual strengths and any weaknesses, and again I felt answers fed me to keep myself in complete honesty. I enjoyed working on my feet and having to think. For this reason, I think being sharp is a definite strength for myself. I compiled as part of my answer. Avery answers as completely as she could, reminding herself that she talked almost as if she was unaware of her strengths while speaking, listing in her weaknesses as something having trouble concentrating and nothing else. The interviewer, Stella, looked around the room before gauging something unseen. We all did the same and saw dust morph into smoke. Returning, Stella asked why we wanted to work for this company. I replied specifically, stating that we enjoyed moving and desired work requiring travel. We found contracting work before and decided to pursue continuous title with another company, and today was our day to search. She no longer needed to ask where we found the reference, realizing we went through the government to find her. I could read her in her eyes and eclipse reality in the mere portion of a government system, for a moment keeping her role and place in society safe. Switching gears to the next question, her face slumped in exaggerated information. How do you get along working with other people? This question seemed self-relieving since we were interacting with her. Working were quiet around us, and I felt disappointed in myself for this reason, replying with a soft mood. We tend to focus on the job and stay quiet but vigilant, focused on working along with others. Since I care not about disappointing myself anymore, here the answers appeared honest and well-formed. I thought that I answered with discipline, increasing my odds for landing work. Shadows began to dance around me for a moment as I searched inwards for more energy. She progressed. How has previous work prepared you for this job, and why is it pertinent? Our farm labor required lifting, loading, and unloading, organizing and using machinery in a timely manner which could be applied to working here. Our previous contract work required constant movement, working as a team, good communication skills, and organizations. We have previous moving work which experience might easily be applied to supply work. Stella interrupted. Yes, this is all good. This helps me create a mental image of how you two might fit in our business. Feeling encouraged, Avery chimed in. Overall, I think our ability to stay focused while we move really helps us stay ahead. when we're working as a team before. At the moment, we are working with our new friends alongside us to help us find work. Everyone agreed as Sel leaned back in her chair. Appearing convinced of our qualifications, she carried the conversation. Trixie and Trillis remained peaceful, paying quiet attention to the interview. My farm labor has left me strong and agile enough to work fast or on a time limit. Stella, our interviewer, agreed. Hesitating, the conversation broke for a moment before I picked up. I'm especially good at following instructions and stay vigilant when working to stay quiet in order to do so. I pay extra close attention to working with others. The interviewer looked at me coolly and I refused to flinch. I readjusted some before finishing my thought. Overall, I think Avery and I working together as a team is really good, because we have our minds together. That being said, as individuals, we also thrive due to our individual characteristics. Just helps that we've gone close enough together to thrive while working as a team. As I had opened this, caught her attention as she looked at the ground and controlling pause before looking back up. As I had hoped, she now wanted to control the conversation, taking stress off of Avery and I to lead. How about I offer you 2 packing jobs to start? Caught off guard, my heart jumped and began beating fast. Trillis shot me a glance and encouraged me to jump here. Knowing Trillis to have the type to act in the best interest of himself, I hesitated before rejoining the collective conversation. I pitched my chin down before making a decision turning to Avery, as I thought she seemed keen on the idea, so we agreed to take the job. Ecstatic, I wanted to leave the room to tell Mo the good news. I wonder if they might help us find a place to stay next. For the remainder of the day, Mo, Trillis, Willard, and Trixie led the way after the interview. We wrapped up by being webbed into Stoach's schedule for tomorrow's briefing. We ended up driving back to the barnyard. We spent the night at circa dinner time. We discussed with the housekeeper Rhoda on possible places to stay in the city. She lacked any possible ideas for the time, but knew a certain cheap motel we might be interested in sleeping at for a stay. For at the time being, we were welcome spending another night here under Trillis's good name. But tomorrow we were on our own. We gave her welcoming behavior to this woman, but assured her we would be needing to stay close to this contracting company headquarters, whose name was never learned when leaving the city. So for dinner, we consumed more pig after washing our hands in running water using bar lard branded soap as lubricant. The meat was overcooked and rough, a chef's specialty. After eating, I convinced Rhoda in transporting us to a road wrangler to get us back to the center city of Strodia, so we could look for hotels to stay at near the office for our new contracting company. We planned on venturing back to the job managing city planners the next day to acquire information on housing if we had no luck convincing Estella Stoach to help us navigate the housing world. Without any parking, and no luck convincing Estella Stoach, parts of the city specifically close to the offices, we instead needed Rhoda to drop us off. So she did, giving Trixie a mark on her watch for when we needed to return to our chosen meeting point. Gas was cheap yet hard to find and unfamiliar with the local area. We danced around the guilt we may have had when pressuring Rhoda and shuffling us back and forth from the rendezvous point, since she lived in and we knew the local area well enough to find gas. The drive was a mere 15 minutes there, so long as Rhoda had nothing to occupy herself with. We were keen on having her assist us in our needs, especially since she lacked the heart to stay with her until we found permanent housing. Our team left after eating before sundown at 7:30 with our main goal as finding a clean room to stay in for tomorrow night. We drove in silence in a serious mood, had fallen over Avery's and mine's lives. Trillis was finally exhausted after the nonchalant pressure around him from the day. For the last 2 days of listening to talk with quantities occupying the social sphere around us, while speaking to everyone at once. Without him talking, the only one attempting to socially engage was Mo, and this was through social behavior which couldn't be described. His sole action was looking about in preparation to engage with anyone. He liked keeping his mind busy, tracked with the environment outside of himself. I watched this last only several minutes before getting distracted as Avery and I began to talk. She wanted to assure me that we were now in the clear and would settle well after finding a place to live. I paid attention to my girlfriend being on the edge about my ability to see the Conjuring. She couldn't. I wanted to express her each time they did to me, but today nothing had showed itself, although I had felt compelled by some otherworldly forces turning the interviews into performance shows. Luckily, the compulsions were unable to put me completely on edge. It was only helpful to have her alongside me to keep company through the fluctuations they brought to my life. The SUV stopped to park outside a multi-story building with a large red painted sign, difficult to read with darkening skies which read in 2 words, Backdrift Palace. We were several blocks from the company's office, and Willie wanted to venture there before splitting off from that point to find hotels. I agreed with Willard, and everyone followed suit. I decided we would search around the office building for cheap motels nearby. We eventually found one after deciding to split into 3 groups from discovering the office onwards. Willard and Mo decided to start by roving behind the office back alley, 2 businesses down, going through from the company's station. Trixie and Trillis went left from the company's doors and we went right. As a group, we decided to take an hour looking for places to sleep for the next 2 nights, or before meeting by the office building to discuss best prices. My girlfriend and I found 3 motels, one which looked mostly like a section house, which we stumbled upon on accident only. A small entrance office space and a sign on the porch provided guiding information. When we entered, we were first greeted by an old woman behind glass protective casing, concealing an office. We asked for prices, ignorant of what good value might be renting a room for a few nights. She gave us her values in the city's trade currency, and we were sure that we would return happen chance we couldn't find a better deal. She encouraged us to find the best prices since we were financial unstable drifters reaching for employment. The conversation ended with smiles, and we left the establishment with new information to compare other motel prices to. The other 2 hotels were run down and well maintained. Finding me another flat single-story connected complex with a beautiful dark-skinned hostess gave us the price of her collective tone when we had found the lobby. She greeted me with a slow break and highlight in her hazel eyes. I stopped slowly and clearly emphasizing nothing, asking for prices. They were only slightly higher than the specific room fees from the previous hotel. She complimented my girlfriend on her sweater before wishing us good luck as we said our goodbyes. The next motel we found ourselves walking to was recommended by the woman, and was down a stairwell to an old subway station where wooden shack rooms were built on each other, containing their own cot for sleeping upon. A small wooden box cashier stand was set up along the rail guard at the bottom of the stairway, where an old man was lurking around gently sweeping away dust. He looked at us surprised we were able to find his business, and we exchanged gentle glances, before allowing us if we wanted to buy a room and offered us to show his setup. The entire underground opened up to a small abandoned network of underground tunnels connecting 2 or 3 subway terminals. The city was originally large enough for the contractors to create 2 or 3 underground stops before abandoning the projects as problems began to occur, he explained. Eventually, he pulled enough money to invest in property, allowing himself to relax as he entered older adulthood. His whole life he had saved while working as a clerk, only to retire to wanting to spend his time caring for something. So he was used to being someone who looked after his space, and he programmed and told him in the direction of owning his own spot. This was a casual background story. After introducing himself, he left track and wanted to show us some rooms. I interjected without explaining our time crunch and asked for prices. He dropped his gaze only for a moment, then abandoned his personal atmosphere to talk business. He frowned and continued his pricing, giving us single and double room values. Neither were affordable, and I assumed the establishment was for higher end, hidden in society. I felt offensive, so before leaving, we wanted to know how he kept his spirits up, living down under the city. He acted off put by something on his skin. The way he was behaving was instructing me to continue digging to find out what he was hiding underneath the surface. He confessed he had a wife and some hobbies, but she was taking a nap right now. I pursued the hobbies option and opened up right away. The old man introduced himself as an artist, and I introduced myself as a traveler. I confessed we wouldn't be able to afford staying in the underground, and his worries about catering subsided in body posture. I wanted to see his art anyways. He shook my hand, giving me his thanks, establishing his identity with the name Joe. He explained how his wife originally was a potter, and she taught him how to work with molding after his retirement. For starters, he wanted to do something other than work with clay, as the process was rather messy. She was also a candle maker, and he's always loved the spark. The candlelight gave the room, so he settled on wax mold making. They wanted an in between, so his wife could combine their skills and teach him, while she learned. They were old, so trying new things was always a positive experience, since they had to move to work together after retirement. I was perplexed and needed to boost asking to see some of his art. This gentleman told me if I wasn't set up with a neat part about his art that I could put it up, laying pieces out against the flat concrete, ordering them together in ways which looked coherent anytime he liked. This sounded religious, and I asked him if he had any spiritual meaning, and he admitted the practice itself was rather meditative. Since he never set up for profit, it was nice to think of it in a way where it could have meaning. First he wanted to show us, and then he explained the context of each piece. We agreed, although on the time crunch we needed to move quickly. He sat us down in the room with 4 plain walls. In the far left side left corner sat art pieces taken apart. They sat in baskets. The 2 he wanted to show us were assembled very differently. One was assembled very differently at first. One was assembled as a 2-dimensional scene flat against the concrete. He began by setting up a large, multifaceted elephant's head, followed by a cloudy body, constructed midsection arms and hands. He began speaking. The elephant's upper half and head represent the frontal section to the deity of the terrestrial earth. With qualities contained in a vertical hierarchy of faces, the sock puppet demon Perched up top, containing following, with elephant's face and self with the devil entombed sharing horns with the elephant's tusks. This piece is representative of the self of the shared experiences with an expression. Specifically in my case, the feeling of having someone or something extra inside oneself, as a symptom of schizoaffective disorder. These lips curling demons share the body, wrestling for control, encapsulate the individual's relationship to the surface ground they inhabit with all mortal creatures. Especially the elephant represents this well with their large frame and emotional lifestyles, which wrestle with the pull of the ground and sensation as feelings. The monster up top in its own head shared experience, with the tomb anglerfish face, possessing the inner mind of the elephant, grasping with the idea that they are being controlled by their own facade, demon mask behind puppeting eyes. With their brisk up top nature represented in part by their bunny-eared self, they grasp with shared deity head hidden under their sock skin, and pull the elephant forward with the drag of the earth the demon in their philtrum is replaced by. Devil connected to the forces below the surface, they serve as mortal compass to live by slowing the elephant's inner world beneath the surface. Together they all interact at once, and in their special nature guide and show others how to interact. Use and function well with their own inner demons, they trailblaze their life's path. Along with these rocket boots from rear portion of the being, the inner flipper ears allow for the elephant to drag themselves hovering just above the soil. Peacefully they collect nothing as they pass by, showing the mortals how to be light on their feet as to not stir anything from beneath the world. I asked to see the other side of the elephant's face in more detail, and he agreed to let me in on a secret. The hidden other side of the face, he told me, the face looking at you while it rests upon the ground, looks so happy because it faces the light. He flipped the elephant's head over to show me the angry dark side, captured by the right side of the elephant's face. The side was faced to the earth and was casted hidden in shadows. He continued, the side hidden by the dark remains angry as trapped with his face against the concrete. He could represent the duality the elephant faces, with their one side expressing towards the light, a happy feeling, while the darkness hides towards the ground. I agree, the rage on the right side of the elephant's face looked hormonal and grueling. I asked him to face the elephant directly towards me, so I could hear a clearer picture of what the complete image of the elephant emotions looked like together, and he showed me a complex emotional state, an experience, of an animal caught in sway having their dark ventral self, caught in expressional bliss, ran themselves in inner turmoil towards something unknown. The left chipper half of themselves gleeful with the inner sanctum of rage revealed. I was caught up in the capture of the stonework, show while he moved on, discussing the rocket's boots, previously laid down the back section of the elephant. The section contained the rear end of the elephant and the legs of the elephant. He also unveiled several minuscule, finely detailed flowers, which he had laid out with various portions alongside as part of the elephant's strange structure. These flowers were either added into larger parts of the elephant fitting like puzzle pieces, or stuck into random holes in the body. He explained the grooves of each piece were finely carved after wax had dried, and he used both melting and removing techniques to obtain the fine detail of the final mold design. I asked him what inspired him, and he gave no answers at first. He explained the midsection was inspired by the cosmos after some time. I thought this was interesting. He pointed out the rocket boots and wings on the rear end piece, reiterating that they kept the elephant hovering, which was important so he never impeded on the sanctum of the inner earth. We moved on to the section above the elephant. He told me that the smashed bits of carved ceramic represented the clouds and heavens, where the people often look towards with their white, fluffy guiding paths unto death before anything else. I never thought of clouds as something to be guided by, although I guess in their shapes could tell someone something about themselves and what their image in their mind wanted to muster from them. Maybe the thoughts conjured by the image of the clouds could help them seek refuge and find pathways along the clouds that differed across the sky. Otherwise, I only saw them as a part of the atmosphere and things which brought rain. He assumed me they were important for the next portion, because what is a kingdom without the rule to lord over? All subjects can make it in. He hesitated, assuring me not to worry about the bits of old sculptures used to create the clouds, as they had failed to suffice to his expectations. That the clouds were used, the extra valuable extra texture to the story, a two-dimensional visual representation he was trying to convey. Without the clouds, the next item would have nothing to sit upon beyond a heavenly golden throne. From his basket he unveiled a stout man, with his knee pondering up over something below, and using sticky resin was attached a white rose. He placed the piece down beside the white cloud rubble heavens, introducing me to God himself. As the next piece of his diorama he began. Up in the heaven at some point or another, we all point ourselves to him, the great overseer of all our actions belonging to the sky. One individual or entity whose sole purpose was to watch over us and guide us in our daily lives, judging us as individuals for his kingdom. I nodded in agreement as he continued. Without his guiding light cast down, for what purpose would his life grant? Whose path would one take? He trailed off here some. I added my condolences, that which captured the mood of God well. The man was humbled, respectful, and curious in posture and presentation, with his face leaned forward in interest. Before continuing, he began speaking again regarding his dropped focus. The champion of heavenly light which you'll never to fail to bask in. For me, the rose represents him holding his light and giving us the blissful energy from attuned with this in its petals. Anyways, I championed this reflection for a moment, looking up at the incandescent ceiling lights above their white light illuminating all around. I appreciated the light for what it brought to the moment, because without it I can never see the art or I can never hear his story. This piece will forever hold the center of my display, for without the story never will have a hero. Guiding us mortals the one to hold the light who beckons us forth to the final bathe in what can only cleanse. Enlightenment, the Holy Spirit, the rose's flavor upon our bodies sweet and clean. Sitting upon a bed of clouds, he shares his gaze with all who drip below, leading us all willing to follow. I asked him what path to, so he did provide. This day assisted me in heavenly moments, to this day sweeping aside dust. We trailed off here and I stared at the wire wrapping the rose, holding the petals back into center. We paused here to look down at the certain intricately stored grace, and we followed before moving on. Rather than continuing our gazes upwards and observing the splayed out art mural, we instead redirected our gazes back toward the subterranean section, where the pieces of smashed ceramic littered the floor of the abandoned subway station. He explained how the shattered clay shards together represented the collective compline of the ground which created all walked upon. How important it was for us to appreciate the safety it provided, for we all lived through it as a collective body. Breathing through the life rooted into it, we all shared its power and form. I respected the idea and appreciated the littering. Then continuing, he unveiled the importance the ground had in allowing us to exist in ourselves. How since we were created by the same substance beneath us, we could find ourselves held by cradling it from below as we rested our bodies down upon the ground to sleep. How might we begin falling deeper within the earth to heal during slumber? How the real importance of the earth was keeping oneself together in tandem with everything physical. How the spirituality of all downwards compression served the purpose of ceasing the external, ridding it instead of helping through keeping everything together, allowing for the movement necessary as a collective body towards the safety as a whole. For him, this represented the earth. Situated kneeling before us as we stood, he looked up, smiling haphazardly with teeth. Now wanted us to address us with the topsoil hid underneath, the protective layer. Looking below the being which hid all those who needed accompanying as a single selves, he brought our attention to the open mouth, body grasping self, which is described as the sole representation of the devil. Unlike most visual descriptions, this figure had no horns and instead sat underneath the surface as a humanoid holding character. There he waits in himself, waiting for any moment of release. Bound in his arms and leg, wrapping himself together as well as forced to be anything which falls, and in him condenses himself away. His body simultaneously acting as a layer and a self for himself, for anyone who fails the earthly life granted to them. As the below keeps one afloat above him, it also acts as a barrier between this blind failed ground dweller. Once failing oneself as the ground liquefies to one's soul, and falling in, he will catch you in his pressurized body, and releasing you into his immeasurable pain and anguish, as your soul becomes him in his constant play. Ceaseless impasse as he watches in constant suffering, alongside the active viewer. Inside the way for any solace from the pit's keepsake. The one and only with limbs encircling their body, wrapping themselves to the myriad crushing feeling, being buried beneath the flooring of every building on earth. Indifferent beneath the cement we walked upon. Nature might protect us from the constant shake, but the colder sun-botched surface infuriated at the disturbance of feet or fine tread expressing oneself with the waves traveling through the surface and surpassing matter's stiffness to the off-med dweller. Nevertheless, he preferred this way over all else, with his vengeance, as in a deity had something out for him. I apologized if it didn't matter. We smiled to each other briefly, maybe discussing such harmful things was left for something less inevitable, and so we moved on after such an idea to contrast between us non-verbally. Arms parted and hands open, he spread out the layout once more. He spread the layout once more in such a manner that it relayed nothing and instead only shroud. Dropping one's gaze towards holding the dark gaze mirroring the legs painted black, he pointed out something besides the sitting god who critiques all critics. I decided in a brief thought, a single Q. Foot dangled in like a with broken piece of what he described as parts of limbs from previous pieces. He had broken them into purpose but repurposed them to something to hold on and climb, leading from the heavens out into the outer space, taking us up to a ceramic plate dusted with cement fragments and powder. These represent the cosmos and how they are expelled into a similar expanse. with every particle continuously washing in the same direction, as I spread their sweet, sweet soot and cosmic debris. I agreed and thought this was interesting how the plate was white instead of black. Internally, I complained how this failed to correctly showcase the black night sky, effectively only brought more light. Similar to the off dust and fragments of what was smashed, I failed instead to mention this and let the thought go. The stars had endless insight toward all things one potentially imagined. I thought similar things. Looking out to them with warm nights, I grew up under the canopy woods. I used to sit under a single tree out on this open field close to where I lived. Dreamingly, endlessly, I gave onwards up, and only with a little of my sight closed off by the tree's brushage. Yes, something about the upward gaze and the polka-dotted tiny glimpses, and the natural tinkle they provided could send the similar endless expanse of the conjuring black mind to open up with similar sparks of insight. Hallelujah. I spoke with my eyes squinting in haze and misery at the thought of the infinite expanse. All thoughts in my mind danced with the stars until now, I told myself. I wanted to inquire when I dared remove myself from their quiet background. All my life I lived with nature and their movements and myself, so they could never truly hold me, unless I dared to dream upon them, gazing upwards in quiet thought. I often found myself in dreary when playing such internal notes upwards of individuality, but myself close to the woods. Even in this underground, I could feel myself tempted to drift into a similar frame of mind, as I could artificially create the setting of an endless starry sky within my soul. My eyes wandered towards the next advancement of the layout, and what would climb over the power leg is a really long leg. A strand from a lion man with a rat's corpse as a lover, rather receding into each other, laying down a position with one who describes his God as a truth-teller instead of a guider such as the God. Imagine oneself as the rat he preached. I wanted to ignore this ideal and wanted to know why the rat was spray-painted white. I never asked instead. I apologized before continuing. What types of secrets does he tell? All types. Dead rats personifies ignorance for them. That sounds pessimistic. So what? Do they love each other? No, but they cry when they forget what to say. They are too high up in the stars. They sleep with them. I found this thought annoying. They pushed ideas on each other constantly in my mind. Why were you? Said and smiled. They need some space eventually, right? Not necessarily. How come? Something helps them think of new ideas. What? The mortals which love them and look after them while their minds drift out from them in outer space. Interesting. Indeed. I wish we could tell the way they did being so far removed. It must be the feeling which provokes their discourse. Never ending, never ending. So they gave ideas to each other about others and talked back and forth to those down below seeking advice. The man holds the rat's mind in place. What an interesting thought. We paused some to think by ourselves almost as if we needed the time to interact with the deity, consisting of the two individuals at discourse itself. Or was this just our brains alone at work? The art had won, and my full attention, the very soul running amok and along track in the back of my mind. I asked them if they ever cried together, and they admitted they did, but only if they witnessed as a star fell. I loved them, and they wished they could love me back, he said. They hated nothing, and wanted one painted black-colored beauty. The white one was always spooned by the endless comfort. Arms stretched and fingers splayed, they spanned their hands in the only thing that beyond, the great beyond, in the endless night sky. Everything. We fell in love. I could hear their voices lie. They resisted nothing and only attempted to calm me. I jumped at the solace of an embrace and thought. Good night, I whispered to myself, and the quiet mind found something new to say. Where does it go from here? He refused to answer. Standing up, I gathered myself. He brought out a flat image on paper of the sun and said it's not a god but a body. I laughed and agreed. Avery disagreed and told me it had to be a god since people has been worshipping it since the beginning of man's conquest and their ability to worship. Nasty, I relished in my brain. He laughed and cried at the end. I appreciated how his accented their final patterns in speech. The sun is something so large and powerful that it disregarded to hide. I gave him my love. She muted with teeth clenched. Mere the sun. Neither, the old man said. I added some tender words to the sun, which included the feeling of passage. This feeling coexisted with the flight and the sun's overhead presence. It created everything out of life as we know it, Avery argued. Neither of us wanted to disembowel her beliefs. I commented on him being the creative of the piece. He regrets as he wanted to show us the kiln. He used the fire of the cement as a wholesome joke to his aging wife. He was running it from her now, and even though he worked with cement, he still needed to feel at home somewhere and with someone. Without his help, she felt empty. The kiln and the lad light to escape. Had to be a part of my art, I would call the kiln hell, where all the bowls went to be condensed. This was a strange thought, but it seemed to use up after the grand explanation of their creative art. I asked, just like the devil, only a larger representation of more what? People? No, I was just thinking that it was something more spontaneous in existence. Something true and yet unwound. Completely there and entirely given in to what they are. Beautiful, I whispered in fairy speak. Avery looked at me like I was estranging myself again. I continued. The light from the heat was so pretty until it tried comprehending the amount of pain. Now I don't feel as well. I gave up something for the moment as something had collapsed through me. The situation with my eternal being has never before escalated. Never before had I lost my cool. Before losing it, the feeling had fallen and created itself. The moment passed and I wanted more people to know about his art, but he told me as long as someone saw it, nothing else really mattered. This was spoken amongst the foundation of some overarching belief. For the moment, I truly loved him. Up in the top left corner held a puppeteering T, which represented the hidden god that controlled people and their behaviors and actions, making them go offhand occasionally or all the time, driving some insane, their own actions at most. This god was intrusive for most people, neutral to itself, and left out from the minds of the overarching creator. The artist, maybe? Who gives a shit?